What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Talking Mets and Rob. How is everybody doing? Before I get started talking about could a Mets Marlins trade help the Mets rotation, don't forget, guys, if you enjoyed this video, hit on that like button if you're enjoying my content. Want to see more? Want to get notified when I post my videos and when I go live? You guys know what to do. Hit on that subscribe button, everybody. All right, guys, so we know the New York Mets, according to many reports, that their rotation is set for the last day ever since the Mania signing. We've heard that the Mets are still actively pursuing another starting pitcher on the trade market. Now, there's a lot of speculation of what that type of pitcher is. Is it another middle of rotation guy? Is it a controllable pitcher with some upside? Is it a top line starting pitcher that's a solid number one or a number two? That's where the speculation lies. But we heard a name that has been linked to the Mets before, a young arm in the rotation of the Marlins over the last couple of years. And the Marlins have been looking at one in particular prospect that they loved for a couple of years now. And this might help get a deal across the line and get the Mets another rotation arm. And it will give controllable arm. And it would be a young arm, a guy, a pitcher with a lot of, not a lot of risk, but a lot of upside because he is young and controllable and could be a top line starting pitcher, probably at best, probably a number two, maybe if he gets better a number one, but definitely could be a number two. And that's what I think the Mets are looking for. I think the Burns, Bieber, Cease, I think with Burns and Bieber, with just the rental part of those players, I think they're going to be harder to take away those prospects or give away those prospects for those pitchers. Dylan Cease is still interesting considering the fact that he has 2 years of control, but it might cost a king's ransom to land Dylan Cease. So the Miami Marlins have two young pitchers that the New York Mets were interested in, and a prospect in particular the Marlins were very interested in over the last couple of years. And the Marlins tried to get this guy and were willing to give up one of the young arms in their rotation over the last couple of years. And this can set up a perfect scenario for both teams where they match up perfectly on what these teams want in a trade, in basically a blockbuster type of trade. So what would the trade look like if Mets are willing to give up a certain amount of players and prospects in a deal? Well, hang on, guys. Prospect huggers, you're going to have to be careful when you watch this because there's prospects going back, and you prospect huggers who don't want to give up any prospects, you got to give to get. And I think it's worth noting that you have to be fair in a trade for both sides. So prospect huggers, yourself when we look at this trade. So what does the trade look like? There's a lot of players involved here. So pay attention, guys, and keep up. Here we go. Jesus Lazardo, 3 years of control going to the New York Mets, along with DH Avisail Garcia, who also has 3 years left on his contract. And we'll talk about his money in a little bit. And reliever AJ Puck, who had a really good season in the bullpen for the Marlins. He has 3 years of control as well. He also pitched for the Oakland A's before the Marlins traded for him. That is what will be going to the New York Mets in a package. And going back to the Marlins, Brett Baty, who the Marlins have been looking to get for a couple of years now, and we're willing to give up a Lazardo or a Cabrera over the last couple of years for Brett Baty, but the Mets didn't really push it forward to land one of those young arms. And also starting pitcher fringe rotation guy, Tyler McGill. He can slide right into the Marlins rotation there, or even a long man in the bullpen. And of course, you got to give him some prospects. Kevin Parada, the catcher in the Mets farm system, number 5 prospect in their system, and Dominic Hamill, who is a rising star prospect-wise in the Mets farm system. He is probably 4th on the list on guys who are probably MLB ready or going to be over the next year or two. Dominic Hamill is a guy who's the number 16th overall prospect. He is the 4th best prospect in the Mets system in regards to Tidwell, Scott, Hazel, those type of guys that are ready to go. And probably Basil this year and next year, Scott and Tidwell. So Dominic Hamill is somewhat expendable considering the fact that there's a pretty good chance that all these guys are not going to be what we all think they are in the major leagues. You know what Lazardo is? Lazardo is a major league guy who can, at his peak, can probably be a number 2, at worst be a number 3 or a number 4. And he's another lefty that the Mets have been eyeing for a couple of years now, but they weren't willing to give up what the Marlins wanted in Brett Baty. Now they will. Brett Baty's stock has fallen a little bit over the last year and a half. even though the Marlins are more concerned about controllable pieces, young controllable pieces that are very cost effective, and they still like Brett Beatty, and they probably think they can get the most out of him in a Marlins uniform. So package going to the Mets: Lazardo, Garcia, Puck. Going to the Marlins: Beatty, McGill, number 5 prospect Parada, and number 16 prospect Dominic Hamill is going back to the Marlins. And again, prospect huggers, you have to brace yourself for this. I understand you're giving up 2 prospects. You're giving up 2 guys that could help the major league roster. Brett Beatty, which I don't believe the Mets are very confident in at all, because all indications were that Mauricio was going to get the starting job. I think they lost a lot of confidence in Brett Beatty. And all you see on SNY Mets or Mets Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, is a lot of Vientos working out a ton. Not a lot on Brett Beatty at all. That should tell you something in the eyes of what the Mets believe in Brett Beatty. Again, Brett Beatty can be a pretty good major leaguer, but maybe they do believe in the Vientos third base experiment more than they do with Brett Beatty, because Vientos has shown more with the bat, and maybe they can put Vientos at third base and make him a little bit better defensively. And maybe they trust his bat more than Brett Beatty, and Brett Beatty hasn't been very great defensively either. So I think the confidence level for the Mets with Brett Beatty is where the problem lies. So the important thing here is Jesus Lazardo. He has 3 years off control. Let's look at the contract right now. He is arbitration eligible, looking around and get a little under $6 million. He's going to hit arbitration 3 and 4 over the next 2 years. Only 26 years old going into the 2024 season, and he's an unrestricted free agent at the age of 29. So the Mets will be getting a cost-effective pitcher who can be at best the number 2, at worst the number 4, and you still got a very controllable, cheap option in your rotation who has a lot of upside. And I think the Mets have been eyeing him for a couple of years now, and they can finally get him on the team. So that's good when it comes to his contract. Cost effective, a lot of upside with Lazardo. Next up, his contract, right, is the simple part, right? Now the stats. That's where we got to look at right now. Last year, he had a 3.5 ERA. His most games started in his career, 32, which I really like. 178.2 innings in the red right there, in that red box. That is something that is more eye-opening. Was he had a really good season, 3.5 ERA, 32 starts, 178 and 2/3 innings, which he's finally shown he can do. And that's important because innings are what the Mets need. On top of that, quality starts. Imagine that in the Mets rotation. 22 home runs given up, and most in his career. But you pitch more innings, you pitch more games, there's a pretty good chance you're going to give up a couple more home runs. Walks were 55. Walks were very much up. He is a guy that loses the strike zone a little bit, but I think you can fix that just to make in a way when it comes to the Mets with their new pitching lab and all that fun stuff. I think you can work on that home run total and that walk total and the strikeouts, over 200 strikeouts. Always key, always nice to see as a pitcher. 200 strikeouts is always where you want to see a starter to be, especially with a high velocity fastball, which Lazardo has. But the innings, he finally showed he can pitch those amount of innings, and I like that. 32 starts. If you get a rotation that has a Kodai Senga that can pitch to under 3 ERA, and the rest of your rotation can pitch every 5th day and remains for the most part about 85% healthy or 80% healthy, you're going to have a 500 baseball team just having a rotation that pitches every 5th day with a Kodai Senga that can pitch onto an under 3 ERA. That's where the Mets were lacking last year. Defense and the lack of quality and actually healthy starting rotation. That's where I think the Mets need. They need innings, and they need to protect their bullpen as well. That's where the Mets are. So let's look at the next guy on the list in with the Mets we began with AJ Puck. AJ Puck has 3 years of control, but let's look at his stats as well. He had a really nice season in the bullpen at 3.97 ERA. Another lefty, which is important in the Mets bullpen right now, it's Brooks Raley. You need another lefty because if you use one, you're kind of stuck, especially in a division where you got Olsen and Harper and Schwarber. You need multiple lefties in your bullpen. And AJ Puck has had a really good season, was with the Oakland A's for the last couple of seasons. The Marlins traded for him, and he played 58 games for the Marlins, 56 and 2/3 innings, only 13 walks, 78 strikeouts, a ton of strikeouts. It's not a flamethrower. He throws around 93 to 95, nothing crazy, but he has a nasty slider. He's a little funky in his windup, and he's a little bit of a discomfort to a batter when he pitches because of the way he throws. And I think it would be a nice little Brooks Raley, AJ Puck type of combination here, which I would really like. And then you have a couple of flamethrowers with Lopez and Diaz, which I think will really help as well in this bullpen. So AJ Puck is the other one in the package. And last but not least is Avisail Garcia. Avisail Garcia has been injured, had a back problem most of last year, was out 3 months because of a back injury. He is not the DH that everybody is looking for. But if you can keep him healthy, he can hit you between 15 to 20 home runs, because that's what he's done in his career for the most part when he's healthy. His average, which in his career, he's a 260 career hitter, a really down season average-wise, and that worries me. But what you would do, you will save on a package taking on his contract. He's making $12 million a year for the next couple of years, and in 2026 has a club option. So you technically have him for 2 years. Most likely the third year is the club option. The team probably wouldn't pick it up unless he has a really big season, but you have him for 2 years control for $12 million per year. You might say, why would you put him in a deal? Well, again, if you want to save a little bit on prospects here, got to take a little bit of money from the Marlins, and Avisail Garcia is the perfect guy for that. So Avisail Garcia, AJ Puck, and Jesus Lazardo going to the New York Mets for Brett Baty, Tyler McGill, Kevin Parada, and Dominic Hamill. Prospect huggers, brace yourself for this type of package, because if the Mets do make a trade with the Marlins or Lazardo and company, gonna have to give up prospects. You can't have all these prospects and not use them as assets in a trade, because all of them can't fit on a roster. You gotta get that through your mind, Mets fans. Every one of these prospects, you might love them all. You can't keep them all, because some of them are going to be used as assets in a trade, because you can't play them all. They all can't fit on a 26-man roster. It's just not possible. Burns has the job of picking the players, evaluating the players, and the prospects that he thinks are worth keeping and seeing them on the roster in the present and the future. And the rest of them you got to use as assets in trade. It's the only way you make your team better. That's just the way it is. It's an anomaly what the Braves have done, as every prospect came up and done well and worked out, because if they didn't, the Braves would have been in trouble. If one of those guys that are all working out for the Braves didn't work out, and only 4 of them did, they would have problems because they don't spend money. The Orioles, same thing. We look, everybody's like, oh, you got to be like the Orioles, got to be like the Braves. Well, the Orioles have been there for a long time. The Orioles don't spend any money. They have to rely on their development and their prospects. If their prospects don't work out, the 4, 5, 6 of them, they're not going to be a good team either. So in this case, the Mets have to use their assets that they have as prospects to get bona fide major leaguers, proven major leaguers, and keep the ones that you evaluated that you think can help the roster in the present and the future prospect-wise. That's where the Mets are. And in this trade, Parada is blocked by Alvarez. Dominic Hamill is your 4th best prospect in your system, behind Tidwell, Scott, and Vazel. So that's not really much of a loss. Tyler McGill, you can say, is a loss, considering the fact that he could be in this rotation, could be a lawman in a bullpen, but you got to give up to get, and you got to give a starting pitcher that's major league ready for and has control in McGill, which he does for the Marlins. And Brett Baty is a guy that the Marlins love. They loved him for a couple of years. Brett Baty, confidence with the Mets has been waving a little bit. We're going to give Mauricio the job. We all understand that. And I think they have a feeling that Vientos' bat is going to play better in Major League Baseball than Brett Baty. And I think Vientos can be a little bit better defensively than Brett Baty. And guess what? That's where this trade is perfect for both sides. It's a fair trade for both sides, Met fans. I know the prospect huggers are going to complain. I know they're going to complain. But you have to give to get. And not every prospect is going to make this team. Not enough room on the roster. You got to evaluate. You got to know the ones you want to keep and the ones you are willing to trade for proven players, and use them as assets. That's the name of the game. That's how it works. With that said, let me know in the comments, guys, what you think. Could this trade help the New York Mets? Would you do this trade if you are a Mets fan? I know the prospect huggers are going to come after me in this video, but you got to give to get, and you got some proven talent coming back to the New York Mets to help the rotation, help the bullpen, and Avisail Garcia, if you can keep him healthy, could be a solid DH option if the Mets are not willing to give Turner, Martinez, or Soler multiple years in a deal or a contract offer. We shall see, but Avisail Garcia would be an option for the New York Mets. So, Lazardo, Puck, Garcia for Baty, McGill, Hamill, and Parada. That's the package I would be going back to the Marlins for Lazardo and company. With that said, guys, don't forget, guys, if you enjoyed this video, hit on that like button if you're enjoying my content. Want to see more? Want to get notified when I post my videos and when I go live? You guys know what to do. Hit on that subscribe button, everybody. Let me know yes or no on this trade package going to the Marlins and what the Mets get back. I want to thank you guys for watching. And as always, Mets fans, let's go Mets.